to mask off a part of my camera. Oh, someone is still coming out in the shot. Let me roll this a little bit more this way. There we go. Okay, no one's in the shot, right? Just a weird saggy glove over here on the camera. Okay, so you need to lower the volume on your speaker or you're going to hear like a crazy echo. Okay. We are, someone's spray ground book bag is coming out in the shot. This video is not endorsed by Spray Ground. We are live from South Miami Senior High School Magnet Photography Program. This one, lightning. My name is Mr. Lopez. Welcome, students, YouTube, and the world. This is so weird. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. I'm gonna click on a window, and I'm gonna click on the Photoshop so that so that we could see stuff. All right. So, what? The internet broke? I broke the internet? Wow, I'm that famous. I broke the internet. Wait. Is it a little laggy? Okay, it's not too laggy. Okay, I'm gonna close this thing that I did. Hold on, let me put it in a folder somewhere. Okay. I'm gonna open a new document in Photoshop for this demo. I need quiet on the set. We are live, guys. Everything that you say is being documented. It's being recorded, okay? These little iMac microphones are pretty good, okay? So you're following along with what I'm doing. You're taking some notes. I'm going to be sharing my screen and talking about layers, layer blending, as I chew on my grapes, right? And layer effects, okay? So we're mostly going to be in the layers panel today, okay? So I'm going to click on open in this welcome dialog box here. I'm going to find an image that has potential for the demonstration, okay? So let's see what we can find here. Where are we going? What are we doing? Holiday lunch. I think these pictures are already edited. What? Let's go to R. Lopez Files and Docs. There's no pictures there. Okay. Let's see what we find here. So far, we're off to a great start. Okay, I'm actually gonna, this one is kind of cool. I guess I'll open these two. I'll open 3 images. Okay, so I'm opening 3 images. They look like they're of the Port of Miami. I'm gonna open them just to have some options, okay? That is definitely not the Port of Miami. What's this one? Let's see. This is, it's like a yacht, right? From an aerial view. And this looks like it's somewhere in the Keys, I'm guessing, Key West. All right, so my layers panel is anchored to my workspace up here so that it's not covered by the little screen share, okay? The first thing that I like to do in Photoshop is just make a copy of the background layer, okay? So you're gonna notice that the background layer has like a lock on it. That's because a background layer is a special type of layer. You cannot have a document that has empty pixels in its only layer. So the background layer gets locked and it's filled with 100% pixels as a default for a JPEG file, okay? That grape doesn't look too good. We're gonna set that one aside. Okay, so I made a copy by just clicking on the background layer and dragging it to the plus sign. And now I have the copy, okay? Question so far? All right. So we're now gonna go to the blending modes here, okay? So the blending modes is a drop down where it says normal, and you're gonna see all of the options there: dissolve, darken, multiply, color burn. And then as I highlight these, it's gonna show what it's gonna do. So the way that blending modes work is it takes what's on the top layer and it starts to interact with what's underneath it. Depending on what's on one layer and what's on the other, it's going to look different. And obviously, depending on which blending mode you choose, it's going to show a different visual like effect. Okay, so a lot of people that work in Photoshop, they tend to stick to a couple of these because of how they work in Photoshop, what they're trying to do. And then other blending modes have very specific uses. You wouldn't create a layer with all kinds of pixels and then just throw the blending mode in there. It would be just for a selection of something, and then you would turn on a blending mode to do a different effect. Okay, so I wanted to show you the drop down just so you guys can see all of the different words that are in there. But I actually want to do something else to this background copy layer. I'm going to take out the sky with the marquee tool. The marquee tool is the letter M on the keyboard. You can also find it in the toolbar. It's the rectangular marquee tool, right? That's how you click on it. And it's basically a selection tool, okay? So when you click and drag with the marquee and you let go, you get crawling ants, okay? Crawling ants means that you have a live selection on one of the layers that you have open in Photoshop, okay? So regardless of what layer I select, the crawling ants is not affected by that. It just means, hey, you have something selected. Whether there's pixels there or not, you have something selected, okay? So I'm on the background copy layer. I'm just going to press delete, and nothing happened, right? Oh, but it did. Because if you look at the thumbnail of the layer where my cursor is, you now have gray and white checkerboard pattern, which means in that background copy, there is no sky anymore. I deleted it. So if I were to turn off the background layer, you see the same gray and white checkerboard. So anytime you see that in Photoshop, that means there is nothing on that layer. It is completely transparent, okay? I'm going to take this layer and I'm going to lower the opacity, and you're going to start to see more checkerboard pattern, okay? So anytime that you see checkers, that means there's either nothing on that, there's no pixels there, or you're starting to see what's underneath it, which is nothing because I turned off the background layer. As soon as I turn the background layer back on, you see the full image, right? So the way that layers work is you have to picture them as stacks of glass that you're looking through. And depending on what's on each piece of glass that you're looking through, it's going to form the composite visual that you're seeing on your screen. So the layers gives you total control over separating stuff onto layers and either turning them on or off with the eyeball toggle, okay, as you could see that I'm doing there, okay. A lot of people like to label their layers, so you can just double click on the word and it'll highlight it in blue, and you're able to type and call the layer whatever your heart desires, okay. So I'm going to increase the opacity again on the background copy, and I'm going to turn it off, and I'm going to deselect the crawling ants, okay. So I'm going to go to select, and I'm going to press deselect, and the crawling ants are gone, okay? So if I turn this on or off, nothing happens because those layers are exactly the same. It's just one of them is missing the sky, all right? So I'm going to turn those back on. I'm going to go to the background copy, and I'm actually going to change the color of half of it, okay? So in order to do that, I'm going to go to the marquee again, and I'm going to select just this top half of the picture here, where we're seeing the horizon line and we're seeing this row of buildings and we're seeing the dock here, okay? If you wanted to toggle a different selection mode, you can go to quick mask mode over here, and you now see what you have selected, right? And the great thing about this is you could actually edit what is selected with a lot of different tools, such as the brush tool. If I paint white with the brush tool, I am now changing what is selected depending on the brush settings and the type of brush that I'm using, right? I can now actually add this building to the selection. Okay, so when I turn this off, it's gonna update the crawling ants to now include the part that I just painted over in quick mask mode. Okay, just be careful with the selections when you're using the brush. If the opacity is not at 100%, you're only selecting a partial transparent level of pixels when you're painting over it in quick mask mode. Okay, so now that I have that selected, I'm gonna adjust it by going into hue and saturation. The way to get to hue and saturation is you click on image adjustments and you go to hue saturation. I can, now that I have the right layer turned on, right? The right layer selected, I have my crawling ants. I'm going to change the hue of just that part of my image. So let's shift the hue a little bit, and I'm going to play with the saturation and the lightness. And I could always turn off on the preview checkbox to see what I'm doing. The buildings are obviously changing color, and so is the green of the trees, right? Everything that is selected is now shifting at the same rate to a different hue, a different color, okay? So I'm going to click OK. And now when I turn on the blending mode, it's going to take what is on the layer underneath it and above it, and it's going to start to blend them in different and interesting ways, okay? So if you're not careful, this starts to look pretty gimmicky. It starts to look overly photoshopped, and it loses the mystery or the magic of Photoshop, right? So I'm exaggerating it a little bit just to make sure that it's noticeable. But in a little bit, I'm gonna tone it down so that it feels more subtle and more believable and natural. Is kind of what we're going for. We're enhancing real life, but it still needs to feel natural, and it still should feel believable. Okay. So I'm gonna leave it on overlay for now, and I'm going to, since I have the crawling ants here, I'm going to show you one more thing that you can do with crawling ants. You can go to layer, new layer via cut. Okay. So now if you look at the layers panel, what was selected is now on its own layer. So I'm going to turn off all of the other layers so that you could see the difference between, the difference between what the Marquee selected is a nice hard straight edge. And what I was selecting with the quick mask mode and the brush, because the brush was soft hardness level, it selected like a nice kind of softer transition between what was selected and what wasn't selected, right? So even though this is on its own layer, it shows me a transition between what was selected and what was part of the feathered edge of the brush, okay? So I just wanted to show that a little bit closer. So again, going back to this idea of separating your layers, right? It protects parts of your image and allows you to manipulate each part depending on the layer, okay? So now I'm gonna type a word because the layer effects is, it actually works really well with lettering, okay? So I'm gonna go to the type tool. I'm gonna click to create a text box. I'm gonna go ahead and increase the size of the font by just hovering where the two T's are. It switches the cursor to an arrow that you can click and drag. To the right, it'll increase. To the left, it'll decrease it. So we're going to go kind of big here. I'm going to click and double click and triple click depending on what I want to select. And I'm going to go, I'm just going to write a catchy get lost in Key West, right? Kind of like this picture is giving a vibe of some kind of a promotional, drone shot or whatever of wouldn't you like to be here, right? So we're going to go with that as our catchphrase. I'm going to move my text by clicking on the move tool. Go figure. Get lost in Key West. Hold on. I want to emphasize this a different way. So I'm going to put get lost with 3 dots. And then we're going to move this to the other line like that. And I'm going to lower it all the way down here so that now you have to look through the image to see the rest of the catchphrase, kind of like that. Okay, get lost in Key West. So I don't like the way the IN is lining up with the busy background, but we'll deal with that later. So we have our text, right? Right now it's just filled with white. But if we go to the layers panel, whenever you type with a text, it creates a type layer or a text layer, right? So we're going to double click anywhere in here. If you double click on the words, it's going to allow you to change the name of the word, right? So I'm going to click just below that. And it's going to open up the layer style, right? So it's actually not layer effects. It's called layer style. My bad. There goes my Photoshop certification. So bevel and emboss, I don't know. I guess that kind of works sometimes. It makes the letters look a little bit more three-dimensional. You can toggle the contour or the texture. Ugh. Don't like the texture. It's a little gimmicky, right? But bevel and emboss, if you didn't notice, let me see if I can zoom in here and then go to the word get. See how it makes it, it kind of pushes the letters in and gives them like a drop shadowy effect, right? That's pretty cool. A stroke is very helpful in making your letters more legible because with a contrasting stroke or an outline around the letters, it's going to stand out better regardless of what's going on behind the words, right? So a stroke is a pretty good helpful thing. Inner shadow didn't really do anything. It must be the settings are too subtle. Inner glow, satin, color overlay. You don't want to turn all of these on. That's kind of weird. You want to choose which ones you like to use. So I like outer glow. It does give the letters a little bit more of a soft kind of a pop. I also like drop shadow. And depending on the angle of the drop shadow, I always like the drop shadow to match the lighting angle of the picture if I'm using picture and text, because that way they look like they belong together. Go figure. So that's the drop shadow effect. For now, I'm just going to use stroke just to see what that looks like. If I click on the checkbox, it turns it on. If I click on the word stroke, it opens the options related to the stroke. So I'm going to increase the size of the stroke by pixels to 5, and the black is pretty harsh. So I'm going to go with a dark grayish blue instead, just so that it matches the vibe of the picture a little bit better. Let's go a little bit lighter so it's less harsh. And then we're going to click OK. All right. So I'm going to zoom out just to see what this looks like, right? And then something else that I wanted to show you guys is blending mode here. Let's see which one we use. I kind of want to go with, none of these are working. It's probably because, there we go. So overlay, soft light, hard light, vivid light, linear light. Okay, those aren't doing anything. So for now, because the letters are white, overlay and soft light seem to be pretty nice options of just getting the letters to feel like they're more embedded in the image. but you want them to still be legible, okay? What I could do, because this is Photoshop, I can go to my background copy layer, okay? Never mind. I can go to the background layer and I can burn, again, because my letters are white, I can burn this part of the image behind the letters I and N. And now with a soft brush, not with a hard, with a soft brush, that should read a little bit better. So I'm going to burn the highlights and the midtones. And that didn't really do much. What? Yeah, sure. I don't know how I feel about that. Let's go back to the type layer. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. This is where everything falls apart when I try to do too much. Let me make the font size a little bit smaller of in Key West because I'm running into too many readability issues with the background. So I'm going to do that. It's a little bit faster way to just make this more legible. So I'm going to press the space bar. That looks much better. Now it looks like the words fit in that part of the image where they belong, right? So get lost in Key West, right? Something like that. This building though, right? That building is, right? So this background copy, when it's set to overlay, is making the letters a little bit harder to read. So if you turn on too many blending modes and you have too many layers and they start to all turn on and they're stacked, it does start to get a little tricky. But you don't want an image that looks like super dense and dark and you know, dark, right? So this is pretty much as far as I wanted to get to today. So just going back to the original file here, we started here, right? We started with our background layer. We didn't do any kind of editing to the background layer, right? This kind of an S-curve will increase the contrast. The opposite S-curve will decrease the contrast, right? It mostly really depends on your style of what you like to do to your edits. Let me see something else here. Nope, that's not what I wanted to do. Let's go to image auto color just to see what it does. Wow. Okay, so it totally shifted everything much more warm there. So that's our background layer. We also isolated this all by itself, right? Using the marquee and the brush quick mask mode to make an edit. If you guys want, I could show you that one more time, right? How did I do it? Oh, the crawling ants must be on, I guess. So the quick mask mode works when you have crawling ants on. For example, I have crawling ants, I turn this on and it now shows me the quick mask mode, okay? And then you just turn this off to turn it back on or off, right? So we isolated that layer and then we do this and we shifted the hue here. And then we also added a text layer, right? The text layer doesn't do anything at the top where it says get lost unless you have the background layer on, then it'll start to blend with the background, right? We talked about different effects, right? Oh, okay, so hold on. It says effects in the layers panel, but then here it says layer style. So if you're listening, Photoshop, this should be called layer effects because here it says effects. See that? That was my confusion earlier. It says effects in one place and then it says layer style in another place. Shame on you, Photoshop. Obviously, the eyeballs will toggle anything on or off if you want to just see what it looks like without it, right? And the same goes for the layers, right? This is kind of where we are right now, okay? So that concludes today's live stream demonstration. Thank you guys for watching. Oh, I did applause. Cool. All right. End stream. Peace out. Are you sure you want to end?